Okay. Welcome to our weekly podcast show. We are here at the University of Rio Grande studio offices. And we are the Rio OSU collaboration. Each week, we feature a program manager from the Ohio State University South Centers, Southern Ohio Community Economic and Development Programs, and community organizations and other special guests. Our mission is simple: to promote the University of Rio Grande and its diverse educational programs, promote the Ohio State University South Centers and its many business technology programs, and finally promote Southern Ohio, a great place to live, learn, and enjoy life to its fullest. I am Jason Winters, co-host and director of the Center for Small Business Entrepreneurship, and with me are Mike Thompson, Instructional Design and Media Services Director with the University of Rio Grande, and Patrick Dengel, Business Development Specialist, and Kimberly Roush, Program Assistant with the Ohio State University South Centers.
Jason, today we have, we're going to be featuring Christie Welch. As you know, Jason, since you also own a farm, Christie is a farmers market specialist with the Ohio State University South Centers, and she's going to be discussing the use of current technology that can grow a small business. I know that Mike and you, Jason, and a number of us are very much interested in the use of technology. And Christie today is bringing some really good tools that individuals that are involved with the farmers market we're going to be able to demonstrate, and we're going to be able to talk about how they're going to increase the business. So Christie, welcome to our show. But before we begin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Patrick, Jason, and Mike. It's a pleasure to be here today. I work currently with the Ohio State University South Centers as the Farmers Market Specialist for the state of Ohio, and I have the privilege of working with farmers markets and the small businesses that sell through farmers markets and that are farmers markets throughout the state of Ohio. And in addition to the work that I do with those small businesses, we provide a lot of training and education. We have the statewide Farmers Market Conference coming up March 9th and 10th in Columbus on the campus of Ohio State University. And in addition to that, I am also a small fruit producer as well. My husband and I own a farm, and we specialize in raising small fruits, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and do a few vegetables. So it's, I think, a little bit unique. It gives me the perspective of not only an educator, but also from that actual producer side. And I think that allows me to bring some unique recommendations and solutions, I think, to challenges sometimes.
I think so. Until you started working with the farmers markets, I always thought that a farmers market was somebody that grew a few vegetables and some ears of corn, and then pulled their car up on the side of the road, and they would sell that until everything was gone.
Now, Pat, you told me that a farmer's market is a place that you can buy and sell farmers.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Patrick. I will have to say that just so that we are on the same page, there are farm markets, which are typically a market on the farm where the produce is produced. And so that's an individual producer has a stand on their farm, and they sell directly to consumers at that location. A farmer's market is typically where you have a group of producers come together on a particular day of the week, and at a particular time. They set up, they sell directly to consumers for a specified amount of time, and then once that time's over, they break down and they go back to their farm. And so we're typically talking about farmers markets today, although many of these tools that are available for farmers markets certainly would be available for a farm market to use on their farm as well.
So do we have a lot of farmer markets in Ohio and in...
We do have a lot of farmers markets in Ohio. Currently, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, there are 278 farmers markets in Ohio, and those are self-identified through a census that USDA does every year for farmers markets nationwide. And since those are self-identified markets, I would suspect that we are well over 300 markets throughout the state of Ohio. And as a matter of fact, Ohio currently is number 5 in the country for the number of farmers markets in a state.
That is a lot.
Yeah, you're thinking 88 counties in the state. That's 3 to 4 per county. That's a lot of farmers markets.
There are a lot of farmers markets, and part of that reason, I think, is consumers are more interested than ever knowing who produces their food, how it's produced, and they want it to, access to it when it's as fresh as possible. And many things, I think, are driving that demand. Currently, the current economic situation that we find ourselves in, it's not only true for local foods, but many individuals are more interested in helping support their local communities and keeping their dollars circulating throughout that local community. There's also been some food safety or food illness outbreaks throughout the country that have also, I think, driven that demand to some extent, which again, consumers really want to know who's producing their food and how it's being produced.
Well,
And Pat, we see a trend, the farmer themselves are trying to look for ways to sustain the farm, and they're trying to cut out the middleman and go directly to the consumers. In some of my business management classes, I have young people that are coming off the family farm, and they're developing business plans to up that family farm and make it more profitable. And they're looking at all of these farm markets, farmers markets to take their produce into town, and they're looking at ways to make their farms profitable so they can keep them in the family.
Now, is this something a farmer would do to be the main business, or is this like a side supplementary thing that they would do?
Well, that's a great question, Mike, and I think it's a little bit difficult to answer because, small farms especially are unique as the person that owns that small farm. And so while many of them use farmers markets as their only method of direct marketing their product to consumers, more and more, I think, traditional farms, when we think more traditional of, corn, soybeans, cattle, those kinds of things, are also looking at ways that they can increase their profits and capture a greater share of the consumer dollar. And some of them are looking at farmers markets as a part of marketing their products to consumers. But many of those very small producers, and when we talk about very small, probably produce vegetables and fruits on an acre or less, typically market mainly through farmers markets.
See, here's an opportunity for individuals that are growing corn and growing different vegetables and fruit. But what about some of the other products, such as eggs or cheese? Is there any special rules or regulations regarding that?
That's a great question, Patrick. Here in Ohio, farmers markets are regulated by the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and they need to be registered annually with the Food Safety Division at the Ohio Department of Agriculture. There's no charge for that registration, but the reason it's beneficial, it provides some exemption to the food regulations for the producers and the farmers market. And so, for example, if I'm selling strictly fresh, unprocessed fruits and vegetables, I can do that without the need of a license at the current time, as long as that farmer's market is registered with the Ohio Department of Agriculture. Now, when we get into some of those food items that are considered to be potentially hazardous, and typically that's defined as those items that have to have temperature controlled, whether that's to keep something hot or to keep something cold to prevent the rapid growth of potentially harmful organisms, then we look at a little bit more regulation involved with those items. So, for example, you had mentioned meat products. Well, if I'm a local meat producer, and whether that's goat or whether that's beef or lamb or any of those types of meat products, first of all, my product has to be processed in a licensed facility. And that facility has to either be licensed by the Ohio Department of Agriculture or by a facility that is USDA inspected. And so that's the first step. Then, in order to take that product directly to the customer at a farmer's market, as a producer, I would have to have what we call a mobile retail food establishment license, and that's a license that I get from the health department where I reside. And since it's a mobile license, that once I have that from my local health department, that license is acceptable anywhere in the state of Ohio. And so again, unprocessed fresh fruits and vegetables, no licensure required as long as the market is registered with the Ohio Department of Ag. If I have a product that needs temperature control, then there are more regulations that I'm going to have to look to.
And do eggs fall under that category?
Eggs are kind of a separate category all in their own, and they've provided to be a little bit challenging from the health regulators' point of view. And one of the issues we have with eggs is if I have my eggs in a cooler and I'm transporting those to a farmer's market to get them to the customer. Well, if my ice water, the water I use to make my ice, for some reason is contaminated and it melts and gets on the eggs, there's a potential then for contamination of those eggs and causing a foodborne illness. And so first thing that again you need to be is be a licensed egg processor with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and then you again have to have that mobile retail food establishment license from your local health department where you reside. And the health department is the one that will say to you, you have to have either mechanical refrigeration, which means I have to have one of those coolers that plugs into my car, or a generator or something to that effect, or whether in fact I can use ice packs in coolers at this particular time. And that's again something that we're trying to get clarification on and consistency from those regulatory agencies. But at this point, your local health department's going to tell you what you need to have.
So you don't see very many egg sales in at farmers markets from a small producer.
Well, I would say, we, from a customer standpoint, people like locally produced eggs. But from a very small egg producer, it can be a challenge, because if my mobile retail food establishment license is, several $100s, and they do vary from location to location, I have to sell a lot of eggs just to cover the cost of that licensure. So it really depends on the scale of that producer and then how much that license is at their local health department.
But
Are the prices generally higher or lower than what you would find at, like your regular retailer?
That's a great question also, Mike, and there's been a lot of discussion about is food more expensive at farmers markets, and there's actually been some national studies that have been done that show actually they're very price competitive with larger retail grocery stores. And I think that producers are very conscious of trying to make sure that they're providing the best product they can to consumer at a fair price. But you have to keep in mind, too, that this is their livelihood, and for many of them, this is the way that they earn their living, and so they have to be profitable as well.
So you might want to compare it to Whole Foods rather than the Walmart.
Typically, yes. And the thing that you have to think about, again, with a farmer's market, you know who the food is being produced by. You can have interaction with that producer and find out how they're producing that food. Where with some of the larger retail grocery chains, that food could come from anywhere in the world, from any state here in the country. And so the other thing about local food is it's typically harvested and in the customer's hands within 24 hours, if not less.
And I know one thing about honey. I guess if you have allergies, it helps you with your immunities and stuff.
There has been some research that shows that consuming local honey can help if you have certain allergies.
I know this is Valentine's Day, but we are talking about the honey that comes from bees, right?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying.
Very good.
So you go around to the 300 or so different farmers markets. You meet with the personnel. Typically, in your involvement with helping the farmers is to become more profitable. Is that correct?
Well, we really like to help them in whatever areas they need, and certainly with the amount of demand there are by consumers right now for local foods, it is a perfect opportunity for producers to try to maximize their profitability. And we do try to provide as much technical assistance and training to help them improve their small businesses. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was, if I'm out in a parking lot or a park, and as you know, more and more people this is becoming a cashless society and more people are turning to plastic. Well, how can we deal with that then as these small producers? And there are some new technologies available that will help us make it easier for the customers to do business with us. And so one of those things is use of a wireless terminal that you can use to accept debit and credit cards. And those wireless terminals have been around for a number of years. One of the downsides, again, for smaller producers for those terminals is they can be rather expensive. You can either lease a terminal or you can purchase a terminal outright. And so there are costs associated with that, as well as every time you swipe that credit card, depending on what kind of card it is, they do take a percentage of the sale to cover their cost, as well as typically there's what's known as a transaction fee or a fee per swipe of a card.
And this terminal is that thing that's about as big as my hand that has the the button pad on it, and a swipey.
Yep, that's exactly right. You see them in a lot of grocery stores where you can use your debit or credit card there, and those are typically wired machines. But you can purchase those terminals that are wireless, and so they work over the cellular system or through Wi-Fi, and so that allows you to do that at a farmer's market or even at your farm market if you don't have electricity or a landline phone right there.
One of the concerns I always have is security, and I know that I'm holding your Apple iPhone, and I have with me that you have a card reader. How safe is this, Christie?
Well, Patrick, this example here, and I don't know how good of a picture we can get it, but this particular device is from Square, a company that accepts wireless payments via a smart device, whether an iPhone or an Android or a BlackBerry or something like that. And I guess the thing when you talk about safety, the companies that are able to process electronic payments through credit cards there are very specific regulations that they have to follow that are set at the federal level when dealing with credit cards. And so you certainly have to think about the security, although much of the security is built into those systems and those applications that these companies provide to you. And so Square is just one example of a device that you can use with a smart device. And as you saw, it just plugs into the earphone jack on your smartphone or an iPad. And then there's an app that you download from Square. And this allows you to swipe the credit card and accept the payment right through your smart device.
I think we should try that. Jason, Mike, can I see one of your credit cards?
You can see it, but that's about as far as it goes.
We can try them both.
So what exactly are you selling?
Farmers.
Migrant farmers?
We can certainly swipe both of your cards. That way we can be double sure that it's working. Yeah. There's another company called Intuit, which many of you are familiar with. They make QuickBooks programs, accounting software programs. They also have a program called Go Payments, which is also available. I just happen to have this device from Square, so I wanted to show that to you today.
So, Christie, how does the typical transaction work as far as money transaction? Does it go to Square and then Square sends you your portion? Does it go directly into your account and you pay them? How does it work?
Well, that's a great question, Jason, and I do think we need to back up a little bit and talk about being prepared with your small business to accept these electronic payments. You know, it's important that your business is properly legally structured, and whether that's a sole proprietorship or a cooperative or a limited liability company, there are many different options, and there are many resources out there that can help you make that type of decision. But the other thing that you need to include in that is a bank account, because with these electronic payments, the funds transfer are all electronic as well. And so when you swipe a customer's credit card, their credit card company that would send the payment to whichever company you're using to accept, whether it's Square or Go Payments or one of the wireless terminals that we talked about. And then that company electronically transfers the funds into your bank account. So you do have to have a bank account set up where those funds can be deposited. So you do have to do some preparation.
Okay, so whenever you swipe the card, does that record a transaction on your phone so you can look at it later on today and it's like, okay, I made like 13 things here and I netted $150?
It does keep some record of the transactions that you do. One of the really nice things about these applications as well, you can email a receipt to your customer, because with this setup, I have no way to print a receipt. And if my customer wants a receipt, then they might be hesitant to use this type of system. But I can collect the customer's email address and email a receipt directly to them. Now, what's the other benefit of that? I now have contact information for my customer, and then I can do some of those social media marketing things to really develop that relationship with my customer as well.
Very nice.
Has anybody ever used PayPal for this?
There are a few markets out there that have used PayPal. I'm not real sure exactly how effective that has been. From my understanding, the customer has to have a PayPal account as well as the market having the PayPal account. But that's certainly another opportunity that you might look at.
And Mike, while the online community, is very familiar with PayPal, the farming community really isn't. I know a lot of my customers that come out when they're purchasing, goats, whatever. They don't have PayPal accounts. They're used to dealing in cash for the most part. So they're looking for credit card applications, but a PayPal just is something that they're not interested in.
Okay.
And so that brings up another good point, Jason, as well, because you have to think about who your customer is too, and what are the demographics of your particular customer. And if they're typically, some of the younger folks in their 20s and 30s, they never carry cash. I mean, they use plastic for everything. And so you have to keep that in mind. And if that's your customer base, then you need to make it as easy as possible for your customers to be able to pay you.
We have a live caller.
Hello?
Patrick, hey, Mike, Bob Hood. Bob Hood at the Visitors Bureau downtown Christie. I'm enjoying your program very much. And Jason, in lieu of Valentine's Day, I want you to know that Patrick does have a heart, whether it does or not.
Well, thank you. I was curious about that myself.
Yeah, I know you were. Hey, Christy, I would like to just chime in for 1 minute and to tell you that with some of the new technology that's being developed that we're kind of sampling here at the Visitor Center is there is going to be an application that's going to be available on the smartphone that will allow you to take a picture of a check and it will be able to be directly deposited into your bank account. Now, I realize that market would have to have a special bank's account, checking account, but for future reference, they are coming out with a way that you can use your smartphone, and if somebody would give you a personal check, you could take a picture of that, and it would automatically be deposited into your bank.
That's a great idea, Bob, and actually I had not thought of that application for farmers markets and small producers, but I just think that is a great way to look at it as well. Again, anything that you can do to make it easier for your customers to do business with you is typically to your benefit.
But one thing that I will bring up about the check issue is not everyone will accept checks. When we deal with people that are coming in from out of town, it's cash or credit card. And the reason being is if they write a bad check, it's going to be awful hard to find that person again.
And we do have problems here at the Visitor Center because, we don't have the capabilities of taking a debit or credit card here at the Visitor Center. And we'd often thought about, selling merchandise that represent, Gallipolis or Gay County. So we are working with some local software developers to be able to come up with ways that we can automatically send that to our checking account. So just a thought. I just wanted to chime in. So you guys I'll enjoy the rest of the program and carry on.
Bob, thank you very much. That's Bob Hood. He's the executive director of the Gallia County Convention and Visitors Bureau director. Thank you, Bob.
Well, and Bob raises another great point. Technology is changing really, really quickly. And one of the things that I find interesting here in the United States, where we think about taking wireless payments with these smart devices, or we think about taking a picture of a check with our smartphone and emailing that to the bank, many of the businesses in the European countries are way ahead of us in technology, and they actually have the little where you swipe your phone and the payment is, you just swipe your phone past some kind of a reader and it takes the payment, or even there's things that look like little key fobs almost that you can use to do payment. So I look for that to be coming soon.
This morning coming into the University of Rio Grande, I was listening to NPR, and one of the news stories happened to be about the coins. They are showing that to create a nickel, it costs 11 cents. To create a penny, it costs 3 cents. And I'm a cash person, and rarely do I ever use credit cards or things of that nature. But I do understand the profitability of making money and the profitability of farmers markets taking advantage of some of the technology that is current.
Well, Pat, the other thing with a lot of small businesses is they have to secure their cash. They may have a young person that's running the register or that's taking care of transactions on the farm. And, sometimes you really got to be careful of who you let handle cash. So that's why the new generation has really embraced credit cards. It's a lot harder to steal off a credit card than it is taking a little cash out of the drawer.
It'd be funny to see. I've seen these markets where they have Amish kids out here with their horse and buggy. It'd be funny to see one of them with this type of technology.
It would, wouldn't it? Well, it's certainly moving very quickly, and we'll certainly have to see where it goes over the next few years.
Okay, we have 4 minutes left if you want to cover the marketing and...
Okay, very good. Thanks, Mike. One of the things I do want to mention as far as accepting wireless payments, whether you use Square or Go Payments at this point, or whether you use one of the wireless terminals, if you look at accepting some of the food assistance benefits that are available to individuals in this country, one of the things that I'm thinking about currently are the SNAP benefits, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. You have to have a wireless terminal. There is not currently an app available to be able to do that with a smart device, although I just saw a press release this morning where there's an application being piloted in Texas, in the state of Texas, to have that. So, but there, in Ohio alone, in 2011, there were more than $2 billion of food assistance benefits distributed to citizens in Ohio. And so I think it's important that we, again, think about access for all of the consumers to local food. So that's one of the things that you might want to keep in mind as well.
One of the other things about the food stamps, because of our state of economy and because of single parent homes and a variety of different issues, it's food stamps are not necessarily just the lowest median income. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Patrick, and I apologize. I didn't look to see what the eligibility income level is at this point, but you would be really surprised at people that are eligible for that assistance. And again, it's due to many, many factors. Maybe somebody lost a job, our current economy is tough, maybe it's that single parent and those kinds of things. So I just think it's important to keep that in mind. And again, when we're using these devices to help our customers do business with us, that helps us be better at developing those relationships with our customers. Again, if you have an email address, then you can direct that customer to your Facebook page or your Twitter feed. If you have that, I think it's very important for local food producers. Again, that's a seasonal business, so typically there are times when we're with our customers quite often, and then we go away for months because we don't have a product to sell. And so to keep that relationship going is really important.
I've seen on the West Coast that these food trucks, that drive around and they serve right out of the side of the van, they use Twitter and Facebook a lot. And they can tell you when they're going to be in your neighborhood or outside the building or whatever. And they use that to great effect.
Absolutely. And it's funny because a friend of mine, a colleague, Julie Fox, who does some direct marketing work as well, she tells a story about a couple that was on their way to the farmer's market and the weather was really bad. I think there were even tornado watches in effect or something. And so they were tweeting while they were on their way to the farmer's market that says, yes, we're coming, we're going to try to make it. And she was amazed at the amount of response they got from their customers. Oh, we're so glad you're safe. We're so glad you made it. So it can be a really effective tool.
Okay, we've got almost a minute left.
Christie, it is always a pleasure having you on our show. Any final comments?
Sure, Patrick. Thank you. I want to thank you, Jason and Mike, again for having me today. And I would say with any venture that a business is looking at doing, it does take planning and preparation, and you really need to make sure that your business is prepared. What legal structure do you have? Do you have a bank account where you can accept the electronic transfer of funds? And then there are, and I didn't touch on this much, but there are some fees associated with all of these things that we've talked about today. And so you really want to take a look at with your customer base and the amount of sales that you're going to do, is it going to be worth your while to have those fees associated with the ability to accept payments wirelessly? And research has shown that if people can use plastic for purchases, they will purchase more. But again, you really just need to do your homework, do your preparation, and see what's going to be the best fit for your particular small business.
And talk with you about some advice. And they can reach you, Christie, how?
Sure. My email address is welch, WELCH .183 @osu.edu.
Christie, thank you very much. Next week we have a really unique individual that we're going to be featuring, Bob Altier. He's the president of one of the fraternities here at the University of Rio Grande, and he's going to talk about fraternities.
Mike, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, just a little. I'm one of the advisors, and talking about the Alpha Sigma Phi. That's Brad Altier.
Brad,
Yeah,
I think it's going to be great.
he's very enthusiastic.
It's
Good.
a really good thing that he's here because all those Greek letters, they're Greek to us. But Mike can tell you exactly what they mean.
I thought they were Latin.
Oh,
I'm Patrick.
I'm Christie Welch.
I'm Jason.
And Mike Thompson. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.